There was a time when silence was the only sound I heard inside me, a time when the pain didn't scream, it whispered, softly, constantly, reminding me of everything I thought I had lost. But then something changed. I stopped asking why things happened the way they did. I stopped replaying the moments I couldn't fix, and I started listening to the voice I had ignored for far too long, my own. I thought I would break. I thought I'd disappear beneath the weight of the world I once carried so delicately on my shoulders. But here's the truth. I didn't break. I bloomed. I bloomed in the middle of quiet nights and tear-stained pillows. I bloomed in therapy sessions and journal pages. I bloomed through prayers I barely had the strength to say. And slowly I began to see her, the girl I left behind. She was still there, stronger now, softer, yes, but more sure of herself than ever before. Because when the world said, "You are not enough," she learned to whisper back, "Watch me." So if you're standing in the ruins of what was feeling like your story is over, hear me. This isn't your end, it's your soil. And sometimes it takes a little darkness for a flower to bloom. And trust me, you will bloom. There's this belief we're taught that pain is final, that when something hurts us deeply, it's the end of the story. That heartbreak, loss, failure, they're all closing chapters. And for a while, I believed that too. I thought when something broke inside me, there would be nothing left to rebuild with. I thought pain meant I had reached the edge of myself. But something surprising happened when I sat with that pain. I didn't run from it. I didn't numb it. I allowed myself to feel every part of it, the ache, the silence, the loneliness that wrapped around me like a fog. And in that space of stillness, I discovered something no one had ever told me. Pain isn't the end, it's the invitation. An invitation to slow down, to listen, to look around at what's left, and then inward at what's always been there. It was like the pain cracked something open, not apart. It didn't erase who I was. It revealed her. Not the polished version I showed to everyone, but the raw, honest, real me. The one who had dreams buried beneath fear. The one who had strength, not in spite of her scars, but because of them. I didn't realize then that the very thing I was trying to avoid, those quiet moments of sadness, were actually planting something in me. A depth, a tenderness, a courage that only pain could water. And slowly, in a way I can't fully explain, I began to grow from it. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it didn't hurt, but because I finally stopped pretending it didn't. There's something about silence that can feel unbearable when you're used to noise. When your days were once filled with conversations, laughter, distractions, it's easy to mistake the quiet for emptiness. And I'll admit, at first, I hated the silence. It felt cold, isolating, like I had been left behind in a life that used to feel full. Hey. But what I didn't understand then was that the silence wasn't punishing me. It was inviting me to hear what I had been too afraid to face, inviting me to listen to the parts of myself that I had ignored for too long, the voice that wasn't loud but steady, I gear, the voice that didn't demand attention but needed to be heard. In the absence of other people's opinions and the stillness of late nights alone, I started to meet the real me. Not the version that performs, that tries, that pleases, but the one underneath it all. The girl who had dreams long before anyone told her who to be. The one who used to believe she was magic, even when the world made her doubt it. It was in that silence that I found clarity. It didn't come all at once. It was quiet, like a whisper that grows a little louder each time you choose to listen. I stopped filling my days with noise and started filling them with intention. I began to feel safe in my own skin. I started choosing what felt right for me, not what made sense to everyone else. And slowly, I realized the silence hadn't taken anything away from me. It had returned something far more valuable. It gave me back me. We don't like the dark. Not really. We crave light, answers, clarity, the comfort of knowing. But the truth is, some of the most powerful transformations don't happen in the light. They happen in the dark. In the spaces where nothing feels certain, where everything feels lost. That's where growth begins. That's where the bloom starts, At first, darkness feels like a trap, like something to escape that's uncomfortable. It holds your fears up in front of you like a mirror and asks you to look. And for a while, I did what most of us do. I avoided it. I tried to outrun the sadness, distract myself from the ache, push through as if pretending would somehow save me, but pretending only delays the healing. It wasn't until I let the darkness sit beside me that I realized it wasn't trying to bury me, it was trying to ground me. I had to be still enough, quiet enough, raw enough to hear the truth I kept avoiding. I needed to break away from who I was pretending to be in order to become who I really am. Growth doesn't always look beautiful when it starts. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's just getting through the day. Sometimes it's tears on the bathroom floor and whispered prayers you're not even sure someone hears. But even in that mess, something is happening. Roots are forming. Strength is being built in silence. Flowers don't bloom in the sun alone. They need the soil, the rain, the darkness beneath the surface, everything we don't see. And I was no different. For a long time, I waited for someone else to tell me who I was, to see me, to choose me, to make me feel like I mattered. I thought love would make me whole, that validation would make me confident, that if someone else called me worthy, I could finally believe it for myself. But that's the trap. That's the illusion. Because when you place your worth in someone else's hands, you give them the power to take it away. It took me losing what I thought I needed to realize what I actually had. I had myself. I had the girl who survived silent nights and shaky mornings, the one who kept showing up, even when she wasn't sure how to keep going. I had the strength I once looked for in other people. I had the voice I used to silence to keep the peace. And most importantly, I had the right to love myself without permission. Reclaiming my worth wasn't loud. Oh, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't happen in one magical moment. It happened in the quiet choices, the ones no one saw. Saying no when I used to say yes. Walking away when I would have stayed. Choosing rest over proving. Choosing me over pleasing. Me over pleasing. I didn't need someone else to fix me. I just needed to remember I wasn't broken. Every piece of who I am was always enough. I just forgot for a while. But now, I remember there's this idea that strength always has to look tough, loud, unshakable. Like you're always standing tall, unbothered, unaffected. But I've learned that some of the strongest people I've ever known don't shout, they whisper. They don't fight to be seen. They show up anyway, quietly, consistently, with grace, and I've become one of them. For a while, I thought I had to harden myself to be strong, that I had to hide the softness in me, the sensitivity, the tears, the tenderness, because I thought those things made me weak. I thought if I cared too much, if I felt too deeply, then I wasn't tough enough to survive the world. But the truth is, my softness didn't break me. It saved me. It allowed me to feel the weight of what I'd been through and still choose to love, still choose to hope, still believe there was beauty ahead of me, even after the heartbreak. It helped me stay connected to my heart in a world that often tells us to close it off. Strength isn't always a roar. Sometimes it's a whisper that says, I'm still here. Sometimes it's choosing to be kind when you could be cold. Choosing vulnerability when your instinct is to shut down. Choosing to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. That's not weakness. That's power. So now I don't apologize for being soft. I wear it like armor. Because in a world that's constantly asking us to be more tougher, louder, I found a quiet kind of power in just being fully, honestly me. People often think transformation is something you can see. A new look, a new city, a new chapter that feels dramatically different from the one before. But what I've learned is that the most meaningful transformations don't happen on the outside. They happen in the quiet, private spaces within us. They happen in the way you talk to yourself when no one else is around. In the way you forgive yourself for who you were when you were just trying to survive. In the way you stop chasing love that hurts and start honoring the love that hurts and start honoring the love that heals. I used to think I had to show the world I'd changed, that I had to post the proof or the glow up, be a walking declaration that I'd made it through. But healing doesn't ask for attention. It asks for honesty, and that honesty is quiet. Sometimes it looks like solitude. Sometimes it feels like grief. Sometimes it's just choosing to stay when your instinct is to run. The real shift began, not when people noticed a change in me, but when I started noticing it in myself. When I stopped reacting to things that once triggered me. When I began setting boundaries without guilt. When I no longer felt the need to explain who I was to anyone. That's when I knew I was becoming something new, not because I forced it, but because I allowed it. And even though no one could see all the ways I was growing, I could feel it. In my peace, in my choices, in my stillness. In my stillness. True transformation doesn't need to be seen to be real. It just needs to be felt by you. People will always have something to say about your choices, about your past. about your healing. They'll question your silence. They'll misunderstand your peace. They'll assume they know your story just because they've seen a glimpse of it. And for a long time, I let that noise affect me more than I should have. I used to measure my strength by how well I could prove people wrong. If they doubted me, I'd push myself harder. If they talked, I'd shrink or overcompensate, anything to shape myself into someone they couldn't criticize. I thought my worth was tied to my ability to convince others I was okay. But healing taught me something deeper, something quieter. It taught me that the moment you start living for their validation, you abandon yourself. You become a performer in someone else's narrative instead of the author of your own. And so I stopped. I stopped trying to correct every misperception. I stopped exhausting myself by defending my growth to people who never bothered to understand my pain. I stopped needing applause for surviving what no one even knew I was going through. Because now I know that strength doesn't come from proving others wrong. It comes from knowing you're right with yourself. I don't need to convince anyone that I'm healing. I don't need to explain why I walked away from certain things, or people, or patterns. It means, all right, I don't owe the world an explanation for the softness I chose to protect, or the peace I fought to find. Let them think what they want. They don't have to understand your journey to make it valid. Your growth isn't up for debate. Your healing doesn't need to be seen, to be respected. And your story doesn't need to be edited just because it makes someone else uncomfortable. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is continue forward quietly without announcing every step, because when you no longer need the world to understand you, that's when you begin to truly understand yourself. There's something no one tells you about setbacks, how personal they feel, how much they can shake your sense of identity. One moment, you feel like everything is moving forward, and the next, it's like the ground disappears beneath your feet. A job ends, a relationship falls apart. A dream slips out of reach, and suddenly you're left staring at pieces of a life you no longer recognize. At first, it feels like failure, like something irreversible, like all your effort, all your hope was for nothing. I know that feeling. I know what it's like to question whether you'll ever rise from it, whether the version of you that once felt strong still exists somewhere inside you. But here's what I've come to understand. Setbacks aren't endings, they're soil. And the things that feel like they're burying you might actually be planting you. It's hard to see it in the moment. When you're hurting, when you're grieving, when everything feels unfamiliar, the last thing you feel is growth. But something happens beneath the surface quietly when you choose not to give up. You keep showing up for your own life, even when no one's watching. When you speak gently to yourself on the days you feel like falling apart, that's where transformation begins. One small decision, you did. One deep breath, one quiet promise to keep going. And eventually, without even realizing it, you start building again. Not from the place you left off, but from somewhere deeper. Somewhere deeper, somewhere wiser, somewhere that knows pain, but doesn't live in it. Somewhere that remembers every scar and still chooses softness. Setbacks might delay your path, but they don't destroy your purpose. They reroute you, not to punish you, but to prepare you, to remind you of the strength you forgot you had, to show you what you're truly made of when there's no applause, no spotlight, just you and the choice to begin again. So no, the setback didn't end me. It rooted me. And from that place, I grew into someone I never knew I had the strength to become. For a while, I felt like I had lost her. The version of me that used to laugh without second guessing. The one who believed in magic and trusted her heart. The girl who didn't overthink every word, who wasn't afraid to show up fully, even if she didn't have it all figured out. Somewhere along the way, through heartbreak, through disappointment, through trying to be everything for everyone, I stopped hearing her voice. I know I couldn't find her. I thought maybe she was gone. Maybe life had changed me too much. Maybe pain had taken too much. Maybe softness wasn't something I could carry anymore. But I was wrong. She wasn't gone. She was just waiting. Quietly, patiently. Beneath the noise, beneath the trying, beneath the mess. She was still there, holding on to the pieces I thought I had lost. All of it was still inside me, untouched by what the world tried to take away. It's just that I had to slow down long enough to remember her. I had to sit in the silence, face the fears, cry the tears I kept avoiding. I had to grieve the version of me I outgrew and welcome the one I was becoming. Because healing isn't just about moving forward, it's about reaching back, gathering the parts of yourself you abandoned to survive, and bringing them home. And I did that. Bit by bit, I began to hear her again. In the way I laughed without apology. In the way I trusted my intuition. In the way I walked into rooms not needing to prove anything, but simply being. And it didn't happen overnight. It took time, patience, grace. But every day I chose to reach for her, and every day she reached back. She didn't disappear. She just waited for me to remember who I've always been, even when I forgot. One of the most beautiful lessons I've learned is that healing doesn't look the same for everyone. It's not always loud, not always visible, and it's rarely perfect. Sometimes it looks like waking up and simply deciding to try again. Sometimes it's pulling yourself out of bed when everything feels heavy. Sometimes it's choosing peace over chaos, even if that means being alone. And sometimes healing is simply this. Choosing yourself. That choice is quiet, but it's everything. Because for so long, I didn't. I chose what made others comfortable. I chose what was expected. I chose the version of me that fit the narrative, even when it hurt. Choosing myself meant walking away from things that looked good but felt wrong. It meant disappointing others so I could be honest with myself. And it meant letting go of roles I was tired of playing just to finally be free. It wasn't easy. There were days when it felt selfish. There were moments I second guessed whether I was strong enough to walk this path alone. But every time I chose myself, my truth, my voice, my peace, I came home to something deeper, something unshakable. It was never about becoming someone new. It was about returning to the person I was before the world told me who to be. Before the heartbreak, before the heartbreak, before the pressure, before the noise. That girl who was brave without trying, soft without shame, and full of dreams before fear took their place. Now I carry her with me, not as a memory, but as my foundation. She is the reason I bloom. Not because life has been perfect, but because I've chosen to rise through the imperfect moments. I've chosen to find beauty where it was hard to see it. I've chosen to plant roots in the soil life gave me, no matter how rocky or uncertain it felt. And that choice to choose myself again and again, that's where the bloom truly began. So, no, she didn't break. She unraveled, she questioned, and she stumbled, but she never stopped growing. And in the quiet spaces where the world thought she would fall apart, she chose something different. She chose to begin again. Not harder, not colder, but wiser, softer, freer, because the bloom doesn't come despite the pain, it comes because of it. And now every petal she carries tells a story of survival, of rising, of coming home to herself. And this isn't a comeback. This is a becoming, and she's just getting started.